Call to order the Tuesday, March 12th, 2019 meeting of the City of Davenport Historic Preservation Commission. If you have a cell phone, please place it in silent mode or turn it off. We welcome all of those who are viewing us at home on the city's cable TV channel. The Commission has before it the minutes of January 8th, 2019. Are there any changes, deletions, or additions? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
I so move.
Is there a second? All those in favor of approving the minutes of January 8th, 2019 signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the minutes are approved. Staff communications.
I did receive an email from the State Historic Preservation Office. They had sent us a copy of the draft guidelines for historic architectural survey. They identified Davenport as one of small groups identified in order to review and provide comments. So I'm hoping we'll take this as an opportunity and provide comments. They would like comments by April 10th, so I plan to review and provide mine if you could. And if you do have comments, please send them to me by April 5th, and I'll incorporate them into a package and send them on to SHPO. But I think great opportunity for us to review this.
This is a very important item. I know in the past we've talked about incorporating some sort of archaeological review in the local ordinance, because we've had a couple occasions during demolitions where archaeological important pieces of history have been found, and the current ordinance does not allow for any kind of stoppage so that some research could be done. So please look over the information sent to us by the state and send Ryan your comments. We have no old business tonight. We'll move on to new business, and that's case number COA 19-01. Install a projecting wall sign at 131 West 2nd Street. The J.H.C. Peterson Sons store is a local historic landmark. Zachary Wilkin is the petitioner. Staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ryan Rusnak, Community Planning Economic Development. The petitioner is here in the audience this evening. The request is to remove the Falbo sign at the J.H.C. Peterson's Sons store, which is its historic name. A lot of people refer it to the Redstone. They're looking to do is remove the Falbo sign there that is next to the entrance and install a corner projecting wall sign that you could see there. The existing Falbo sign would be removed. You may recall in 2018, the River Music Experience obtained approval for a sign. So essentially you have the Woodfire Grill on the left side of the entrance, the Falbo sign on the right side of the entrance, and in 2018, the RME had come in for a proposal to put a sign kind of there at the entrance, which would be in the middle of those two signs. Does not, and they were going to do some new banner signs as well. It doesn't appear that any of those came to fruition. I took a picture there last week, and the signs that they had proposed were never installed on the banner, so I'm not sure exactly what happened. I would note that the J.H.C. Peterson Son is a multi-tenant building. This is often a challenge when you talk about signage for buildings that don't have unique storefront and their own individual entrances. I wouldn't say it's unique to this building. You see it kind of in the village sometimes with multi-tenant buildings. Signage becomes a challenge of different businesses wanting kind of I want my sign here and I want there. I don't have an issue with a corner projecting wall sign. I think it could be wonderful here. What staff is concerned about is retaining the existing Woodfire Grill, the previous approval for the RME. That may or may not happen. I understand that this sign has RME at the top, and so it appears that perhaps they're abandoning that. But the precedent sets that if this tenant can have a corner blade sign, why couldn't Woodfire have its own separate? These are issues we've discussed at the Freight House, for instance. Doesn't have a great street frontage on River Drive, but where do these business tenants put their sign in order to attract businesses? And we've talked quite a bit about that. So staff is struggling with this request. The code section that we referred to as new additions and related construction shall not be discouraged when the improvements do not destroy historic material and such design is compatible with the sign massing scale and color. So it's not that a corner projecting wall sign would necessarily detract by itself, but when you start having an over-proliferation of signs in different locations, that's where it would detract. And so staff is unable to support the current request. Again, I've talked to Zach. I would love and encourage this is, in my opinion, one of the most important historic buildings in the downtown. It could be, a high quality sign that had all of the tenants on it could be a very, very cool thing. Certainly we'd want to see the other signs that are projecting towards West 2nd removed. But with the presentation as proposed, it's very difficult to get behind. And again, I would love to see something to go back to the drawing board a little bit. Obviously, it takes some cooperation from the business owner who may not want to spend additional money on that. But we do see very well done corner blade signs. The Union Arcade is one of the arcade. Analog Arcade is one of them. They just did a very slight relief to give it a little bit more depth on the sign, and I think it works as a corner blade sign. Now that's a single tenant sign business, so it's a little bit easier. But with such a large building, there could be an opportunity for a little bit larger of a building, and incorporating the RME, Bad Boys Pizza, as well as Woodfire Grill into it could be something that was really cool. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
My only question is, this building during its history has never had a corner sign. That, to me, that kind of speaks a lot to the building, and I tend to agree with you, the importance. Also, I served on the 1999 downtown group that focused on what to do with downtown Davenport, and it studied signage across the downtown, and its recommendations were less projecting signs and more like what Kilkenny's Pub has, with signage and windows in that, or something like Carriage House has, which is a simple, well-designed sign that's lit from the sides as opposed to an aluminum-wrapped interior lit sign. I know businesses feel that they need that signage, but I'm one that goes to the RME all the time, and I, for one, don't need a sign to tell me where I go. But my concern is the historic fabric of the building, and the fact that even when the department store was there, it didn't have any kind of signage like this. Commissioner McGivern.
Can you give us a little update on the history of the existing sign and how it was approved and where we got to where we are today?
Yes, I don't remember the exact time frames, but the Woodfire had been there for quite some time. The Falbo came in. It was pre-2016, so it may have been a couple of years prior to that. So the Falbo sign came in, and at the time we looked at it as being two projecting wall signs that were smaller in scale, but they were on opposite sides of the entrance, and so the scale seemed to work a little bit better. And so I really think the impetus for the Falbo sign was because the existing Woodfire sign was already permitted.
And so another follow-up question is, why is this a historic preservation issue and not a design and review oversight? I know the answer, but I kind of want you
Great
to hear
question. Yeah, Design Review Board reviews all design proposals in the downtown, in the central business district, with the exception of locally landmarked historic properties. And so I think a lot of the design criteria would be similar, but it's obviously elevated to this commission once it's a local historic landmark, and the J.A.C. Peterson's is a local historic landmark.
I will say, too, that the banners were approved by a previous historic preservation commission when the building was completed in about 2002 and open to tenants. That commission approved all the RME banners at that time on the 2nd Street side and the Main Street side.
And then my final question is, this is the applicant, as I understand it, is a tenant coming through. Where is the downtown partnership on this, and what feedback or involvement have they had on this issue?
I'll leave that to the petitioner. He indicated he did speak with Kyle Carter with the Downtown Partnership, so I'll let them respond
Thank
to
you.
that.
Commissioner Cordage?
Yes, I have a question for staff. I'm not familiar with regulations that are in place for the downtown buildings as it relates to signs, either non-illuminated or illuminated signs that would hang inside the window and be visible through the window. And I have more than one question, but I'll stop with that first.
Okay. We recently amended our sign regulations prior to the new zoning into effect on January 20th. We did not regulate window signs. We do now regulate window signs, and we limit the amount of window sign that can cover basically the interior of the sign. I don't recall whether that applies to lighted signs or not. I don't remember an outright prohibition. What I do recall is there's a minimum transparency requirement for a window.
And I don't have a clear recollection of the other sign that you referenced for analog as to what the story height is of that sign. I know it's a little bit different kind of a building because it's a very tall one-story bank building that's been vertically subdivided since then. And in the Peterson building, we've got a very clear delineation between the pedestrian first story and the upper stories. Okay. Kind of like they split the difference. They what?
I guess my only question is, there's a corner sign in downtown, and so I'm asking myself, are we arguing, are we talking about, or are we contemplating the position of a building-mounted sign in the downtown, or are we concerned about the design of an illustration? And I'm kind of curious, what is the question before us? Because I read through the material, and I understand I have the same concerns.
Yeah.
Because part of this, I think, is historic, and part of this is design, and which kind of is a little creepy, and which I think makes it difficult for staff.
Yeah, I mean, I understand typically that a business owner has a corporate brand. We are less likely to influence the design of that corporate brand. We may ask for a flip of the colors, meaning, you know, it's much more visible to have a black background with white lettering as opposed to saying, I don't like your business logo. So we look at things more of the design of the sign, the quality of the materials, other signage that may play into that, and let the branding go for itself. Because, I mean, we've been to Main Street Conference last year in Kansas City. It was very interesting to talk about historic signage. I mean, signage is the one thing on the building that comes and goes the most, right? And so to look at it less, I look at it less from, you know, is it compatible with the design of the building, and is it higher quality materials, as opposed to thinking that sign's going to be there for the next 100 years, because it's probably not going to be.
I guess my question is, let's use the Adler as an example. We had the tower, the tall part, we were talking about the visibility and the light flow and everything, and then the major thing and we didn't get into the placement. Wasn't really an issue for that. It was more about the historic architectural design to make it look a little bit more original, and we don't have that off here. And so I come back to looking through staff. what are we looking at here? Is it's just the corner placement, or is because I'm reading both in the staff, and I think that's the confusing part for me.
Sure, that's fair. I think with the Adler, at least we had a little bit less of a struggle because, you know, the signage as proposed was an homage to what was historically there, and so we that is absent, as the chairperson pointed out, and so I begin to look at what type of signage would detract from the feeling or the architecture of the building, and so the rationale I lay out is an overproliferation of signs could be. Does a corner sign by itself do that? I don't believe it doesn't. It could work. I would advocate for a higher quality material and a little bit better design. And I would advocate that the other tenants be involved in that and the other signs be removed. Or you could have another smaller sign located on the west entrance sign and abandon the corner sign itself. I think once you get into an overproliferation of signs, you're starting to detract from the historic building. And then what I keep coming back to is if RME and Bad Boys wants their blade sign here, what's to stop Woodfire from coming in and saying, well, I want the same thing now too? We can't. We couldn't.
Thank you for the explanation, Ryan. And I guess as a relatively new commissioner, the question I would ask, and I think you've already gotten there a bit, is then would Bad Boys have the option of simply replacing a small sign like what Falbo's had there and then foregoing the one on the end of the building, the side sign? Would that be an option as well?
It could. I think we would have to ask the petitioner, would they be willing to modify their request? And if yes, then we could come back to that. If no, then we'd have to this commission have to vote on what the proposal is.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Corders?
Yes. As I understand it, the application is for two signs, right? And one replaces the existing Falbo sign, which basically matches size and scale and placement to the. Oh, I thought the slides showed another sign like that.
It just showed the existing, so it was a perspective of showing it had the existing Falbo sign and then showed the RME. And it may, but Zach and I talked.
Can you?
It was a picture taken so that we had a template basically to put what our sign was going to look like and what we're proposing on there. So realistically, I mean, there will be no Falbos. That is what we're proposing. That'll be just the corner sign.
Right. So the Bad Boys sign in the middle of this view is not going where the Falbo sign was.
No.
Okay.
This is just
I misunderstood the application. It's my fault. Well, the issues that I have with that, and part of it has already been expressed, is that if we approve a sign in the upper story level above the street window level, which is, by the way, quite tall on this building in particular, that then we have to approve that for anybody else who wants one. And the signage for the tenant on the east half of the building is relatively discreet and quiet. It's very visible. It's, in terms of the pedestrian nature of a reviving downtown, the signage, you want to be able to catch the attention of the pedestrians on the street, as opposed to massive car traffic going through, which the traffic is going down. The restrictions and the approvals for signs so far in this building for the commercial signage has all maintained signage down at that level. The pennants, the banner signs up above are not illuminated. They don't portray a commercial aspect as much of a a festive or festival aspect and a celebration of the Redstone building. They look more like they're celebrating that the building was saved and is completely renovated than advertising something in particular. And we don't have any commercial signage other than what may be in the entrance for all of the tenants that may be in other places in the building.
That's correct.
And I believe there's an empty floor in the building.
That's correct.
And so if we were to approve upper story projecting signage or even flat upper story signage, at what point and with what justification would we say, no, you can't do that? Is it up to 5 signs is okay, but more than that is too many, or 10, or is no signs, no illuminated signs, no commercial signage above the street level?
This is a reoccurring conversation, as I mentioned, that we have with multi-tenant buildings that
And
share, for most part, a common entrance.
it seems to me on a building, or on this building in particular, with the height of the shop window area, and when you take into account the really high level of the transom level of the shop windows, that there's adequate space for signage that's appropriate for this building that does the job that the tenant needs it to do, which is mainly help customers know where you are and find your way in. And I don't think that will take too long with Bad Boys in downtown Davenport, that people will be there. So it's hard. I can't support the application as it is for that sign in that location. I don't know if I explained my reasons very well or not, but
I think I got it.
it's my attempt.
I think you, Commissioner Cardis, hit what the 1999 study group hit upon, what staff has talked about, and that's a more friendly pedestrian area. And larger signs are only for automobile traffic. This building went through numerous staff and commission reviews because I sat on it while it's being renovated. We had 4 meetings just on the windows alone, and 2 meetings on the eastern wall because that was a brand new construction. So this significance of this building ties itself back to Chicago after its fire and some of the architects up there. So it's a difficult situation, and I too cannot support it as proposed. But Zachary, would you like to address the commission? Yes, please.
Well, thank you for giving us the opportunity to come, before you guys for this. A couple of the things I'd like to speak of. Obviously, everybody's objections were very well warranted. One of the things, the RME sign that was approved for street level, from our understanding, is actually not this side entrance, but is on the other side. From our discussion we had with Tyson Danner. I have a rendering in the packet. Okay, certainly. Just comes from my standpoint to enter the red room as it was intended to have the artists' names as you entered the building. You obviously enter from the other entrance, whereas here you come in right to the. Okay, certainly. Yeah, we have reached out to Kyle Carter with the commission, and everything that we've gained in terms of from the condo association, everyone's okayed it in our building. Woodfire, everybody's basically given us the green light that they would have no objections to it. I mean, I know that's it's ultimately your guys' to say, but as far as us having a multi-tenant business, we do seem to be on board with everybody in our building. We are open to including Woodfire on the sign if that can help get this across the line. I mean, ultimately, I think as we do well and as the Red Zone does well and Woodfire does well, we all have an opportunity to do well. So we really firmly believe in the co-branding of RME and Bad Boys, and that's what you see with our sign here. Is that's really the angle that we like to take. We want to support the River Music Experience building in every way that we possibly can, whether that be help through fundraising, providing food at their shows that they have in the Red Sun Room to add another aspect to their business and what they're trying to do. We really, really are behind that aspect, and we think that a sign like this, where it stands out to people, really shows the correlation between the two brands of RME and Bad Boys. And so I know that it's large and it's aimed towards the driving traffic as opposed to the foot traffic. We want it to be a celebration of our two brands, as you guys spoke of, in terms of that building to being a celebration. If you guys have any questions, any suggestions, things that you would like to see out of this, we are open to going back to the drawing board to make this happen. We could obviously do a smaller sign there where Falbo's did, but we firmly believe that to establish our footprint down there, we are going to need something bigger than what was there. We want to be here, and we want to be here for a long time. That's kind of where we stand with it. And as we said, it seems like everybody in our building would definitely on board with this. So I don't think that we would have any opposition from that. I know that aesthetically, you guys spoke a little bit in terms of the design suggestions. I mean, obviously, we want this to be what we can to make it happen. So I turn that over to you guys.
Commissioner Keel?
Does it make more sense to go ahead and decline this and do a work session and let them kind of come back with some other ideas rather than just continue to hammer the situation for the next half hour? Or I'm just kind of maybe...
Well, my suggestion would, I think that's a good idea. It would take some cooperation from the petitioner because you do have 60 days to act on it unless they're willing
Right.
to extend that time frame. I probably think it would be best if they were willing to take into some of the comments and see if they could incorporate a corner projecting wall sign with all tenants in there. Certainly they'd have to get Woodfire to buy into this concept, and then what would that look like? So my suggestion would be a work session in April, but I don't know when the business is planning on opening, so I don't know what the timing is. But a later work session of, this is the conversation we had, and here's some designs, what do you think?
Would that involve just tabling this then, Ryan? Would that be a suggestion?
Again, I think I'd want to know what the petitioner was. It depends. If petitioner says no, this is it, I want you to vote on it, then obviously vote on it. If they say no, we're willing to go back to the drawing board, I think you could. And again, I think I need to hear from them about your time framing of when your business is planning on opening.
Yeah, we're pushing to be open by the 21st of this month, and we understand with the sign and everything that goes into this, the fabrication. We didn't expect this to be with correlated with our opening. So I mean, we are open to going back to the drawing board to make sure that we can get this approved. As I said, the big thing for us is that we want to show the brand alignment between the places in there. And if we're successful, we firmly believe that Woodfire can be successful too. And ultimately, it all kind of goes towards the RME experience itself is becoming more successful, and that's what we want to do. We don't just
Commissioner
wanna come
McGivern.
in and get the money.
Thank you. First of all, thank you, and thanks for the investment in downtown Davenport. I have a lot of friends that live in downtown, and they're excited to have a pizza delivery place that actually can like bring product and not wait for an hour and a half. I think you're going to do really well. But I guess here's two concerns. Because I was on the city council when we did the Redstone and River Renaissance, and there was a huge amount of capital and public investment. And I think the historic preservation and design overview this is where it's kind of like getting weird and melding together. And I don't think I think really it's about signage of the building and just not one tenant, which is a real overlying issue. I would say to staff, I think this might be a good opportunity for a joint session of historic preservation and design overview, because some of this goes probably beyond. It kind of gets in that weird area, and I think as our downtown continues to get stronger, we kind of have to have those cross collaborations. And Adler was kind of unique, but we're going to have more of these. And there is signage on 2nd Street, from the subways to the Wells Fargos to everything else. And that's where this gets kind of difficult as a commissioner for me, but as a citizen too, because you don't want it to look Las Vegas-like, but at the same time, it's our downtown, and businesses have got to identify themselves. And so, I think it's more than just a tenant signage issue, it's a building signage issue, and it's the fact that the downtown partnership's not here is a concern of mine. I'm just going to say. And what's the bigger picture? And so I would encourage the petitioner, instead of asking for a vote, is to pull this back. We're pretty flexible people, I think. I think everyone understands historic preservation is about economic development, redevelopment. We want you all to be successful, but, it's got to work. And I think some input from design review would be really helpful, so staff is, it's not all like on their shoulders, and we can work this out together. But I'd like to have building ownership and downtown partnership to have some appearance and have some feedback on this as well, because the lack of them being here tells me they either don't care, they're not interested, or the petitioner's not been working with them. And I don't know what the answer is to that, but we got to figure that out. Okay. And I'd rather say, let's talk in 2 weeks than no. Personally, that's my opinion.
Yeah, and I'd rather that we do that as well too.
Commissioner Cordes?
Yes, as a point of clarification on your sign, it says RME Bad Boys.
Certainly.
It wasn't perfectly clear to me whether the sign was advertising two entities or whether you were adopting the name of RME Bad Boys for this location. And there's a difference. As like Moline Bad Boys, and this is RME Bad Boys. Or is the sign truly advertising RME, and are they also an applicant for this sign? Is it RME and Bad Boys, or could you explain, please?
Certainly, yeah. As I had spoke a little bit before, the idea for us is really behind brand alignment, in which that's Bad Boys with RME, RME with Bad Boys. So that's where the idea came from behind this. Obviously, we are the only ones on the applicant. We went to Tyson Danner with the Redstone Room and proposed this and said this is what we would like to see. I think one of our initial hang-ups on a sign like this was we didn't have RME included, and we felt like we were kind of singling ourselves out in this building, and that's not exactly what it is. We didn't include Woodfire on the first rendering, obviously because they have their own signage. RME, they do have the banners, but we wanted to have something more in terms of the illumination and the LEDs behind it. So, I mean, we look at ourselves as Bad Boys Downtown, Bad Boys, Downtown Davenport, Bad Boys RME, Bad Boys Redstone Room. So I mean, I wouldn't say that it's title coincided, but we still feel that there is a major importance to be made between Bad Boys and RME being at the same location. And it's more for brand purposes, really. We feel that we can help their brand, and we certainly feel that they can add something to ours as well, too. Yes, you're welcome.
Commissioner Q?
I have a placement question.
Yes.
so it'll help maybe. It's kind of more for Ryan, I suppose, and maybe even Dave. So part of the issue here is that your sign's on the second story.
Correct.
Right. So are you willing to bring the sign down?
Yeah.
Okay.
No,
so I just want to make sure that we come, to the next meeting or a work
Yeah.
session or whatever, and have moved your
Yeah,
sign.
exactly.
No, we don't just come back with the same sign that says wood fire on the bottom. You know what I mean? So I did have that question. One, I want to say thank you for coming to downtown. Very excited.
As well.
So welcome. We're very pleased with that. And, just echoing what Bob said, thank you for your investment in downtown. I look forward to good pizza being downtown.
So there'll be plenty of it.
So that, and then two, just again, also kind of echoing that collaborative, we'd like to see Woodfire here if they're going to be a piece of the sign, RME, whomever is going to be included in, partnership as well. So, do you guys have specific questions for us that can help you determine what your next moves might be? I know I heard you say
I
you
mean,
had a question.
Did you want to speak, Scott?
I'm Scott Hancock, I'm the owner of that business. And basically, my question to you is, who do you want us, we worked with Kyle, and we talked with him, and Tyson, all that, so we were given, they were 100% behind us, at least in our meetings and everything. I would have brought them to the meeting if we thought we needed to bring them to the meeting. My position was, we used the colors similar to what they wanted, and we like the co-branding and everything else, but specifically, who do we want to work with? What committee, what persons do we need to touch base with in the next 2 weeks? Actually, in the next 5 days. And so we can be prepared
I guess
better than we are now.
Ryan could answer that more than any of us. When you say a sign that incorporates all building tenants, do you include the possible tenant for the vacant third floor and the tenant on the fourth floor?
I wouldn't, because I view those more as an office type
Okay.
setting. Estes is up there on the fourth or fifth floor, and they don't rely on a lot of signage. They're an office.
So you're focusing on the street level tenants?
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Woniam?
Yeah, so I just kind of wanted to agree with Bob. If we're going to be going one way or the other, we should probably square up with the design review board on what's kind of expected downtown here. I don't think they're the ones that determined analog, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so it's kind of tough. I mean, because that's still a historic building, and it's going to be in the downtown historic district, so it would sooner or later play into all the historic buildings that will be in the district downtown. So we should probably have something cohesive sign plan or something like that, where we don't maybe have one building that's got grandfathered in a big corner sign and another one we don't let it to. But the other, my other thought on this is, I know one of the questions was, well, how many people are going to have signs on the building? You're going to have multi-tenants there. I don't necessarily see a lot of demand from the office tenants to have big signs. This is a ground floor retail spot, and as far as I can tell downtown, I don't, Wells Fargo has signed, but they're the ground floor retail tenant, and, I know they occupy some upper office space, but, I think that's my thought, is that we're only really seeing signs from the retail tenants. So.
Commissioner McGivern?
Yeah, and kind of just, I'll end it with this, but that's the troubling or the challenging thing for this, because, really, if I understand the ordinance as I do, we don't care if it's RMC signage or anything, it's the placement of the signage, and is it appropriate? First level, second level, is it appropriate for the building? I get that. Overlying issue is signage of the building, which overlaps everything else, which puts them, the tenant, is a very difficult situation because they want to get everything done, and I understand that. What I don't understand is why the ownership entity of the business isn't here to talk about that, and where's the downtown partnership? Because it does play into the overall purpose and historic nature of the building on signage? And that's the million-dollar question, and I think that's where staff is armed or kind of handcuffed a little bit on, if I'm summarizing. That's where I'm confused about it. So I'd like to see, I don't think we have to wait a month to delay this. If we can try to figure something out to help them, but I do think we need design overlay. I mean, why wouldn't we try to tap in even just for their feedback, so we can all be smarter and help that downtown corridor? And I know staff may be like, oh, it might be a pain, but
No,
I think, one, I'm not sure why the tenant is the applicant for this. I really don't. That confuses
they
me.
always are. They always are.
Yeah, I think,
Especially more for design. We see it a lot more in design review board, but they always are.
but for a building of this stature and nature, I think that's inappropriate. Now, that's just my opinion, and maybe design review and legal could tell us completely different. But the lack of that, otherwise you could have 15 signs on that building, and that's is where we come into a problem, and that's where I think design review should play a role in this a little bit, or at least give us some feedback, because they're down there all the time, and that's my thought. I would like to see them ask for a delay so we can kind of wrap our hands on this as quickly as we can.
Yeah, I mean, essentially what you're alluding to, and I totally agree. It's like Annie Whitmire. You know, you're talking about, which is a good thing, is a master sign design guidelines, because otherwise people are just, doing their own thing here. And we just haven't gone to that level of creating master design guidelines for this building.
But if nothing else, building ownership, condo development should be down here giving us a big picture of what they're thinking about signage on this building, so we can kind of incorporate it in our decision. That's unfair to us, I think.
Commissioner Keel.
I just wanted to say one last thing. Oh, well, actually, I had a couple questions. And I'm sorry, this was probably in the packet, but if you own Bad Boys, what's your role?
I'm the director of business development.
Oh, okay. I was just curious.
Sure.
I wanted to say, I mean, I don't want to speak for everyone, but what you're proposing isn't necessarily bad. Don't feel like we just don't like it or anything like that. It's much more about where's it going, how does it fit, how does it affect future things. So,
We completely understand.
yeah. So,
We
and
used
then-
the height of the sign because there's already brackets there. There was a sign there at one point.
there was at one time, I
Yes,
believe,
that's why
yeah.
we put that there because we figured there was a sign there. And
So,
so I don't know what was there before.
Yeah, there are brackets
There was
right there on
brackets
the.
already
Okay.
there, exactly where we
Okay.
put the sign.
but
Those brackets may have been left over from the Christmas decorations that were used in the 40s, 50s, and 60s that crossed the intersection too.
Real history.
I remember those.
Yeah.
Commissioner Rankin.
Yes, I have one concern, since I have a design background. When I read higher quality sign, I not only thought of the placement of the sign or the materials it was made of, but also the tie into the building. And I think some of the other commissioners have voiced that concern. I know, listening to community feedback also, things like when the Adler went up, it was amazing. And everybody said, why do we like it so much? It's not exactly what was there before. Older people could say that. But they said it ties in to the architecture. I don't see that happening yet. And I'm wondering if we do have a sign that has all the tenants, if that sign tied in, that would be a win-win for all that's concerned.
Be very aesthetically pleasing as well too. I agree.
Commissioner Cochran.
Mr. Wilkin and Mr. Hancock, I want to really sincerely thank you for your time here tonight. This is a lot of time, and I really appreciate that. Welcome again to downtown. I would like to ask staff, Ryan, would it be reasonable to try to organize a meeting such as Vice Chair McGivern has suggested with design within the next 5 days so that they can come up with something for review, and we could have a small work session for approval if we just table this issue for now?
I could throw it out there. I know the design review board meets in less than 2 weeks on a Monday. But I can always, I just like I would to you, I would say this is a request that was given, and we think this requires a higher level of design sensitivity, could certain members meet?
Well, I really appreciate the cooperative spirit that you've shown us here tonight, so I would politely suggest that we table the request so that a rendering can be put together, and you can work with design and the downtown partnership and the HPC to get this approved as quickly as possible.
I'll second that.
That would be to the April 9th, 2019 meeting, and then I'll work in the interim about setting up a joint meeting that we can attend prior to that.
Thank you, Ryan.
I do have one question. I know one of the things mentioned was the height on the sign in terms of being on the second story. From your guys' standpoint, does it make sense for us to have that lowered more into the first floor area? I don't want us to be getting too close so that people can jump up and hang on anything.
You wanted at least
It's never been an issue with the one for Woodfire or Falbos.
Yep. Okay, so maybe we'll set that.
So if it's just below,
Certainly.
I would say if I'm going to approve a sign in that location, then all the tenants would have to participate in it. The RME, Falbos, and yourself. So,
if we're talking, that may be the first step, is do we have willing participants? We could sit around and design a great looking sign with all the tenants, but if Woodfire says, I'm not interested, we're spinning our wheels. And so I guess, in my opinion, staff, as if I'm an administrator, that'd probably be the first question we would need answered.
yep.
But don't we think at the end of the day, it's building ownership? The entity itself is driving this for us, and that they're ultimately responsible for the building. And so I think it's unfair that they put a tenant in front of us to put a major change on a historic building and not take any accountability for it whatsoever. And again, I think that's on the downtown partnership and the building ownership, and they should be here because they are a vested player in this. And without that, I don't see how we can move forward. I don't understand how design review could even have any impact on that whatsoever. And I think that's really unfair to the city for them to put us in that situation.
Are you okay with a 1 month tabling?
Yeah, are we 1 month? 2 weeks. Yeah, I thought we were going to try and move to have this size.
It's April 9th for formal action, but we'll meet before that to discuss informally.
Okay, certainly. I'll just coordinate with you, Ryan.
Okay.
Okay.
Roll call on the tabling?
Cordis? Keel? Wanio?
Yes.
McGivern?
Yes.
Franken?
Yes.
Cochran?
Yes.
Free.
Yes. Work with staff, and then we'll try to get this joint meeting set up with all the interested partners.
Thank you again. I really
Thank
appreciate
you.
As soon as possible. Thank you.
We have no other business tonight. Is there anything else from commission members tonight? Seeing none, is there any public comment tonight? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. All those in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the commission is adjourned.